Hi everyone, welcome to iGlobal. We're covering some topics around personal money, and specifically, we're going to be talking about apps and gadgets to declutter your finances. Since apps are the new gadgets, we'll be focusing on them. And I have with me two really interesting folks who are ideal for this talk. They live and breathe decluttering finances for users. So over to them, over to you, Vivek and Sam, to introduce yourselves, and we'll dive into some questions thereafter.
Cool, thanks, Anurag. My name is Vivek Madlani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Multiply.ai, which is the UK's first fully automated holistic financial advisor, where we cover not just investments, but also savings, pensions, life protection, and other products. What our app does is that it automatically connects customers to the right products, the right time, the right amounts. And currently, we're very focused on helping people buy their first home and the kind of initial stages of building their wealth. Prior to founding Multiply, I was a trader. So I was a trader at Lehman Brothers and RBS, where I built a trading business from scratch. And I'm also a fully qualified financial advisor.
Awesome. Sam, over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sam. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nova Money. And Nova is the first UK gamified personal finance app. So as we all know, money is a serious matter. We just try to make it a bit more fun to manage, because one of the problems nowadays is people spend more than 2 hours a day on social media and less than 2 minutes per week looking at their finances. So we try to make the user experience much better, much more engaging. And for that, we have designed a gamified way to track your finance, to set goals, to stay on track in a way that you'll reach all your saving goals. And our mission is to make sure that you'll track your finance every day. Before that, I was working in the investment banking industry at UBS. I was the head of liquidity and funding risk in Europe. And basically, my job was to make sure that the whole bank had enough cash and resources for all its activity and survive the next financial crisis.
Great. I'll come back at some stage, Vivek, to why you chose to why you chose to focus on homes. And Sam will talk a bit about again, how the gamified experience works, right? But before we kind of go into the specific apps, I just want to kind of maybe talk about some specific or key principles that people should keep in mind when managing their finances, right? So Vivek, can we have something from you? I know we discussed a bit about this, so could you just spell it out as to what are some of the basics we need to keep in mind when managing our finances?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most important things to start off with is to really organize the way and be very clear about the way you think about your finances in your head first, and then you can kind of figure out how you want different gadgets and apps and other tools to look like. And something that we found our customers find very helpful is having an initial split in their thinking between day-to-day finances, almost like their cash flow and their kind of day-to-day spending, their groceries, their rent, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis versus their long-term finances. And this involves things like their investments, putting money away into their pension, things like that. And within and where we tend to kind of really operate and do a lot of our work is on the more longer term side of things rather than the day-to-day finances side.
Yeah, so I actually just to add for the viewers, to add for the viewers, I think that's a really cool way to look at it. And just to point out, what Sam's company does is helps you with the day-to-day finances. So trying to help you realize where you're spending your money. And Vivek's company helps you focus on your long-term finances. So I would really listen in carefully and try and break. And I think it's a great way to think about your finances. Like being aware is really important. So firstly, being aware of day to day, because the day to day actually builds into your long-term savings, right? So Sam, you wanna give some bits about what your principles are?
Yeah, I entirely agree on the distinction between the day-to-day and the long-term. We're focused on the day-to-day and building the right healthy habits on a daily basis. One of the things I can share that I've noticed with a lot of people, millennials, actually don't know how much they're saving per month. So, for example, if you're running a business and you have KPIs of your business, your revenues, your costs, etc., you need to track your KPIs to perform. If you can't manage what you don't track, and quite ironically, a lot of people try to save money, but they don't know how much they save per month. So one of the first thing we try to solve is educate them. This is how much you're saving per month, and the vast majority of people believe that if I put £200 on the saving pot, it means I have saved £200 this month. Unfortunately, life isn't that simple, because you may move £200 on the saving pot, but if you spend more and because you use credit card, etc., you can be in a situation where you earn 2,000, you have spent 3,000, you move just 200 on the saving pot, but you have accumulated debt on a credit card. So I would say,
is that what you refer to as the wealth equation? Like when we were talking about the wealth equation, is that what you're trying to get people to?
So to simplify things, we give one equation for everybody to follow. What you save equal what you earn minus your cost. That's it. Then you can move it to a pot, you can invest it, you can leave it on your current account. It doesn't matter. That's basically what you have saved, or the wealth you have created during the month. And if people understand that, they would immediately perform much better for all the financial objectives, short-term and long-term.
Got it. And are there like any numbers? I know you may not have this at hand, but are there any numbers which tell us that, let's say in the UK, is there a habit of taking on too much credit, and does that really impact your? I mean, from a daily habits perspective, do people end up actually borrowing a lot more than than what they are earning? Are there any numbers to indicate that?
Definitely. So the average credit card debt in the UK is about £3,000 per person. And the danger is, although people, they will move the money on the saving pot and they think they have saved, and they think they won't overspend. But actually what they don't realize is they're overspending. They might see a positive balance on their current account, but they just accumulate debt on a credit card. So they overspend by 100, 200, etc., 1,000. And it's very dangerous because we had a lot of users, they were convinced that they were saving money. They can see the money growing on the pot.
So actually, would I be right to say that credit card spends probably is the number one thing to watch out for in general? Would you say that that's
so
true?
it can be credit card spending, but it can also be robo-advisors. So we had a lot of users. Mm-hmm. They don't actually realize they do some very hidden mistake. They would use a lot of robo-advisors and transaction roundup. They move money into a saving pot, which usually is remunerated between 0 or maximum 1% nowadays. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the month, they don't have enough money. So either they are in overdraft, and in overdraft, you pay about 19% plus fees. Or even worse, they don't even realize they don't have enough money. So they use their credit card that they can't pay off by the end of the month. And they would pay again the 19%, 20, 25% interest rate.
So assuming that this is one of the biggest challenges, right? So let's come to some apps, right? So what apps, and here we'll kind of deviate away from what you guys do and try and go and look at some of the other apps that are in the ecosystem. So what kind of apps, if you could name a few apps that are out there that people can use to make sure that they are not or they understand their credit card usage, they understand maybe savings versus how much they owe. Are there any apps out there that allow you to do that?
That's Vivek, a very good question. Actually, I've tried to search them all, and I couldn't find a single one.
Okay, so there is Plum and there is Clio. I found these.
Vivek, we have a lot of users. They use Plum and Clio, and they still fall in the trap of auto saving and not realizing that they are overspending. So I've tried all the apps. None can tell users when they're actually overspending. And that's why I had to create another app that would tell users when they're overspending.
Vivek, go ahead. You were saying something.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to provide a similar answer to that, because I think both Sam and I have gone on the journey we've gone on to kind of, I guess, fill a certain void. I think there are benefits to some of these apps. The ones that you mentioned, Anurag, around, Plum or Clio or Chip. There are a few out there that help people get into the habit of saving. And that is such an important habit to kind of develop in order to start creating a bit of a buffer between their day-to-day finances and going into debt, that kind of thing. But I think sometimes they can hide what's truly happening. I think that's what kind of Sam is alluding to here, which is that.
So would I be right in saying that, for example, an app wouldn't let you track an overdraft, for example? Is that
there are some apps that kind of look out for that, and within their algorithms, they will kind of try and figure out, okay, you might be going into an overdraft here, or you might be going to debt. But I don't think those algorithms are particularly advanced yet.
Okay.
And like, just to talk to the way we're looking to approach this kind of problem that Sam outlined. At the very beginning of our process, we take users through something called a fact find, where we look to understand what their current levels of debts are, how much they currently have in credit card debt. We then try and kind of get them to update that on a regular basis. There are some debts out there that we classify as I wouldn't say good debts and bad debts, but there are some debts out there that are okay to kind of have in place, things like mortgages, which are fairly low interest.
I was just going to talk about that. Yep. And so would, let's say, your app or any app allow me to track, so actually what I've not come across is, I was trying to make an investment just last week in the US, and in a company that's a private listed company. And the US has regulations on crowdfunding, like, you are able to do certain investments if you qualify for for a minimum level of wealth that you have, right? And I was like, you know what, hang on, let me just try and calculate it. Do I even qualify to actually make that, right? So I realized that I didn't have a sort of balance sheet of my finances, that I'd never seen it as that, okay, these are my assets and these are my liabilities, right? Are there any apps out there that help you kind of maybe look at your finances as, like, assets and liabilities, or
I think there are certain apps out there that are tending towards that, and I think which will provide you with a bit of a snapshot. And we're certainly tending towards that, and we've got pretty good coverage now of certain types of investments. I think there'll be certain things coming in play that will allow more transparency around things like pensions. There obviously already is a lot out there already with open banking for current accounts and savings accounts and kind of bank level accounts. But ultimately, what I end up having to use is to aggregate everything in one place is probably something like a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet. Because there is, it depends what kind of finances people have. I think for the majority of people, there are going to be apps out there that will do the job, and ours would be included in that. But if you've got esoteric investments like you were just mentioning, in the investing in the US, that's quite a rare thing for someone from the UK. Or if you've done some angel investments or something like that, then it's difficult to aggregate absolutely everything into one view.
I
think what's really important is to understand how to keep track of it and just have somewhere where.
So actually, I think I would just want to call out that actually Google Sheets or Excel can be pretty powerful apps in themselves. It's just a matter of putting in that effort. Obviously, they're not real time. So, for example, I use Google Sheets, and I make it a point to update that every 6 months. I sit down with my wife and with my family, and I run them through my side of finances just so that they are comfortable with it. So Google Sheets and Excel can be great apps actually to manage your finances, but of course, they will never show you the depth which needs to be shown. With that, I'll just probably call out some of the apps which are there, which are Plum, Clio, which kind of do money management, but of course, like Sam and Vivek have mentioned, they don't entirely let you track it in the right way, because they are sometimes missing the important elements of, let's say, overdrafts or outstanding payments that you've not factored into your cash flows. And for that, I'm hoping that what Vivek and Sam's companies do, and we'll talk about specifically about them in a bit, help you all, and you can actually download their apps as well. So moving on to another element. So we've been talking about more about expense management and so on. Let's talk about let's say investment and trading. Now, Sam, I know many people may not see the difference there. What is it that they need to be aware of when they are thinking about investment versus trading?
Very good question, and I think it's very important to make the distinction between both. So investment is you're investing in the long term of something you believe in, a company, an asset class, etc. And on the long term, it will go up. But if you zoom in, then it will be quite volatile. And that's the noise. So investment consists in believing in the long term and ignoring the short term noise. Trading is all the opposite. Trading is much more short term oriented, and the goal is to then make money out of the noise, out of the short term volatility. And most people believe of investment of stock picking and selling and buying at the right time and timing the market, which is extremely hard. And also they should be aware who they're facing when they're trading. Trading is a zero-sum game. Whatever money you make is the loss of somebody else. And in front of them, they're competing against hedge funds. And hedge funds have algorithm to identify what people will do, an algorithm that will identify what people anticipate they will do, etc. And
are there any
directly
apps that
at the exchange.
Normal people like us kind of compete with that? Are there any apps that have so is robo investing already a big thing already, or is it something that's going to come up in the next maybe year or 2 years? Is it already big, or is it going to become big anytime soon? And are there any apps that actually allow you to do like the robo investments?
Well, robo investment, the principle is you don't do anything yourself. It's already quite big, especially in the US. It's also getting bigger in the UK. And it's important to say this is not trading. This is in investing.
Okay.
Because when you're trading, you're competing against the hedge funds. They have more resources. They have more data. They have real-time information. By the time you're reading a tweet from Elon Musk, they already positioned themselves and executed the trades.
Right. Vivek, you were mentioning something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, where like the other thing on the trading side, beyond like the other participants that you're competing against, it is very time consuming. It is very much a full-time job to really get to grips and understand what you're buying, what you're selling, when the right times are to put these positions on. I know this from having done it for over 12 years myself. And so if you're trying to do it yourself, it is very difficult to do.
So what are some apps we could look at? For example, back in India, or even now, I use an app called Zerodha, which is super awesome. If anybody's looking at investments in India, I would imagine that you should have a Zerodha account. I'm not so sure if international users can have it, but we should look it up. It's a really amazing app to allow you to invest in stocks as well as mutual funds. So Vivek, are there similar apps here? I know of eToro, and I mean, can you talk us through
the one a lot of people use to trade is Free Trade.
Okay.
So that seems to come up quite often. And then on the robo investing side, there's our app, which is Multiply, and then the others that have been set up in the past, which have grown in popularity, are the likes of Nutmeg, which I'm sure a lot of people would have heard of. But
So what does Nutmeg do? Again, it's like an investment, is it auto investment, or it's just a dedicated?
So connected to what Sam was talking about earlier, like when you're looking at the long term, I think what's important and what the kind of key principles there for people to keep in mind are to be diversified, as low cost as possible, and tax efficient in what they're kind of putting together. And I guess the major role of what have been deemed kind of robo-advisors, although a number of them don't actually provide advice, is to pre-package products and funds together such that they provide that diversification and access, and to also help people connect through to the right package of funds. So another really key principle when it comes to investing is to do so in line with your attitude to risk, how much risk you're willing to take beyond which you feel uncomfortable. And a number of these different providers will try and figure out what your attitude to risk is, and then match you to the right collection of funds.
Got it. And actually, for someone like me, and this is a question, in the UK, what is the equivalent of a mutual fund or is it the ISA or, do you know the concept of mutual funds? Basically, mutual funds are like a collection of funds which would invest in, let's say, equities, large caps, mid caps, small caps. So just a collection of equity funds or debt funds. Is that ISA here, or what is the equivalent of that?
So an ISA is the wrapper. So that's like a box, a tax efficient box where you can put investments into it. And we also have, mutual funds here that you can invest in, or you can put, trackers or ETFs or stocks and shares into the ISA. And the great thing about ISAs is that any kind of returns you make within that and any money you withdraw out of that is totally tax free. So it's the ISA is
I've heard of Hargreaves Lansdown. Are they like an old school company that has become that's done well to digitize themselves, or are they like a new age digital app?
No, Hargreaves Lansdown have been around for a long time, and I guess the likes of Hargreaves Lansdown, you would have probably heard of Interactive Investor and AJ Bell. They're essentially called DIY platforms. So when you go and open an account at one of them, you need to have a very strong idea of how much you want to invest and what you want to invest in. They're not going to help you figure out where to put your money.
Got it.
The thing with advice, and some of these other apps like you mentioned, robo-advisors, and certainly what we do is that we help guide people and help them figure out the best funds to kind of put their money into.
Got it. All right.
Okay, so
interactive investors,
and with 90% of people would be better off.
Sorry, go ahead, Sam. Can you repeat that, please?
I said what's important to add is 99% would be better off investing long term rather than playing the stock trader, because it's extremely hard to win at trading.
Got it. So I would imagine that apps like Interactive Investor and Hargreaves Lansdown are also some that can help you invest into mutual funds or ISAs, etc. So they would be another type of apps to use, right? Today.
The key thing there is figuring out whether you already know what you want to invest in or not. If you have a really strong idea, like I want to buy this particular fund or this particular stock, then those apps could be a good shout. But what we find is most people need help with that. They need help figuring out not just what to invest in, but how much to invest and what kind of wrapper as well. So that's where you can go for a more guided journey.
Awesome. I'm just looking at the time, and I think we are kind of down to about 5 minutes to go. So I think with that, let's come to like the last bits that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about specifically. We have already spoken about what your apps do, but if there's any kind of like an offer or something or how to use it, would be good to call that out. So the last bit I want to check with you all is that, with the pandemic's economic impact still to come, right? Once the furloughs end, there's going to be a lot of challenges people will have with cash flows, etc. What would be your top 3 money saving techniques, financial advice at this time? Like what would be your top tip, let's say, that you would tell people to look out for?
So
maybe we can talk about some must do's and must don'ts, like make sure to do this, make sure, or at least as much as possible avoid this.
So what we've seen during the pandemic is that a number of people have been able to build up quite healthy savings habits and have been focused on building their emergency funds. we recommend between 3 and 6 months of monthly outgoings and an emergency fund. So I think a must do is to continue with that habit. I think that's very healthy, and that will help people avoid debt going forward. And I think on the other side, we've seen a lot of people spend more time on their finances, and in particular, get more interested in things like investing and learn about that. And I think it's really important that also continues into the future. I think the other thing to mention, like that the pandemic has had pretty big impacts on people's cash flow. And there are products out there like income protection and other things like that that will help people if there's a pandemic in the future. So it's worth people exploring products like that as well.
Got it. All right. Sam, over to you. What would you really advise must do or must not do?
Number one thing is know your numbers and know how much you save per month. So it's your income minus your cost. That's your monthly wealth creation. You can save, you can invest it the way you want. The second is the daily habits. Even if they look very small and insignificant on a day-to-day basis, is what will build up and make what you will be in 2, 3, and 5 years. So it's extremely important to look at the impact of your daily habits and how they will impact your long-term financial goals.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Vivek and Sam. I think some really cool call outs. I'm just going to quickly summarize all the apps that we spoke about. So for expense tracking, you've got Plum, you've got Clio, you've got Nova Money. For your long-term investing, you've got Interactive Investors, you've got Hargreaves, and you've got Multiply.ai. The difference being that you need to know what you're doing when you go to Interactive Investors, whereas Multiply.ai is like a robo investor and will actually advise you. There are also apps like Free Trade and Nutmeg to check out. And lastly, if all of these apps are complicated, stick to Google Sheets and do your finances at least every 6 months, if not every day. But I think nothing like knowing and decluttering your finances on a day-to-day basis. So I hope you'll check out the apps that we've spoken about and that this session was useful. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thanks, Vivek and Sam, and look forward to being in touch.